Mail-order bride arrived with twin babies, rejected by Groom. But the town's doctor saw her worth. The sun hung low over Silver Canyon, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. The town was quiet, except for the occasional creak of a wagon wheel and the soft neigh of horses tied outside the saloon. Today, however, an unusual stir ran through the air. Everyone seemed to be watching the main landing area, where a small transport ship from the outer colonies was scheduled to arrive. The townsfolk whispered nervously. Mail-order brides were not rare in this part of the frontier, but this one had arrived with twin babies, a detail that had already sparked gossip long before the ship even landed. Leora stepped off the transport with care, holding her twins close to her chest. They were small, fragile, yet alive and alert, staring wide-eyed at the dusty world around them. One had a shock of dark hair, the other fair, and both clung to her with quiet trust. Her boots sank slightly into the soft dirt as she walked, and her long coat flapped in the wind. She had been traveling for months across star systems, through dust storms in space, and now, finally, she had reached the frontier. Her heart pounded not with fear, but with determination. She knew that survival in Silver Canyon would be harder than anywhere else she had been, but she had learned long ago how to endure. Ryder Callahan stood on the porch of his ranch house, his tall frame rigid, eyes shaded by the brim of his hat. He had been expecting a bride, yes, but not this. Not with children. The twins stirred in Leora's arms as she approached the ranch gate, and Ryder's jaw tightened. Pride and stubbornness battled within him, and his first words were sharp. "This isn't what I agreed to," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. "You can't stay here." Leora's lips pressed together, and she met his gaze evenly. Her hands instinctively shielded the babies. "I came as promised," she said softly, "but these children are mine. I cannot leave them behind." Ryder's eyes narrowed. He shook his head, the dust catching in his thick hair. "I don't want them. I wanted a bride, not—" He stopped himself, seeing the defiance in her stance. "You need to go," he finished. A murmur ran through the townsfolk who had gathered at the edges of the road. Some frowned, unsure of what to do. Others shook their heads, whispering to one another. No one dared approach the ranch directly. Ryder Callahan had a reputation as a man who did not suffer fools or challenges lightly. Leora took a deep breath. She had faced harsher judgments on the outer colonies. One could not survive across the stars without patience and courage. "I will not go back," she said firmly. "I will find my place here whether you accept it or not." For a long moment, Ryder did not speak. The twins squirmed in her arms, one letting out a small cry that broke the tension in the yard. Ryder's eyes softened, though only slightly, at the sound. He turned away and walked into the shade of the barn, leaving Leora standing alone in the sun. She let out a quiet sigh and turned her attention to the town itself. Silver Canyon was rough, a mixture of wooden buildings, dusty streets, and the occasional gleam of technology imported from space. The settlers had carved out a home here, but the harsh environment made it clear that only the strong could endure. She would need allies if she was to survive, and perhaps eventually find the respect she deserved. Her steps led her to the edge of town, to the small brick building that bore a simple sign, "Dr. Elias Thorne Medical Services." Unlike Ryder, Dr. Thorne had a reputation for calm judgment and fairness. He was a man who saw value where others overlooked it, and Leora had heard of his work from passing travelers. The door opened with a soft creak as she stepped inside. The smell of herbs and antiseptics mingled in the air, and Dr. Thorne looked up from his workbench. His eyes, sharp but kind, immediately fell on the twins. "You've come a long way," he said quietly, standing to approach her. "And you've brought company." "Yes," Leora replied, her voice steady. "They are my responsibility. I cannot abandon them." Dr. Thorne nodded, gesturing toward a small cot in the corner. "We'll start there. They'll need rest, and you will too. The frontier can be harsh, even on those who are strong." As the twins rested, Leora found herself explaining her journey in simple terms to the doctor. She had traveled across stars, through dangers both human and mechanical, and had survived because she had learned to endure. Her voice held no bitterness, only quiet strength. "Doctor." Thorne listened intently, nodding as she spoke. "I can see your value," he said finally. "Not everyone could make it this far, and certainly not with children in tow. You may find it difficult to earn the trust of others here, but I believe you will. You just need someone to give you a start." Leora's heart lifted slightly. For the first time since arriving, she felt a flicker of hope. Not everyone in Silver Canyon would reject her. Not everyone would judge her solely for having children or being different. As the sun sank lower behind the hills, the town quieted. Leora stepped outside with the twins in her arms, feeling the weight of both exhaustion and possibility. The streets were empty now, but she could feel the eyes of townsfolk watching from their porches and windows. Whispers floated in the air, some curious, some skeptical, but none approached. Ryder Callahan remained on his porch, watching silently. He did not yet understand the woman who had arrived, nor the depth of her courage. But even he could not ignore the way she held herself, the way she cared for the children, and the way she moved through the town without fear. He did not trust his own thoughts yet, but an uneasy curiosity began to grow. Night fell over Silver Canyon, stars blinking in the clear desert sky. The wind carried the scent of dust and sage, and the distant howl of a coyote reminded the town that the frontier was never truly safe. Yet in that quiet, Leora felt a strange sense of calm. She had survived the journey across worlds, faced judgment and rejection, and now she would face this new world with determination. She sat by the edge of the cot, gently rocking the twins to sleep. Their small hands clutched at her coat, and their quiet breathing was steadying. Dr. Thorne watched from the doorway, seeing not just a mother, but a survivor, a fighter, and someone who could shape the future of this town if given the chance. Leora's eyes scanned the town one last time before she rested. The streets seemed less threatening at night, and the shadows no longer felt as sharp. There would be challenges tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. But for now, she had a safe place and someone who believed in her worth. That was a beginning, a first step toward a life she could carve out for herself and her children in this rugged, unforgiving frontier. And somewhere in the quiet distance, Ryder Callahan thought about the woman he had rejected. He did not yet understand her, and he was not yet ready to admit it, but the seed of recognition had been planted. He could feel it in the way the town seemed to shift slightly around her, in the hushed admiration that lingered among the few who had seen her strength. The night grew colder, the stars brighter, and Leora held her children close. Tomorrow the challenges would come, as they always did on the frontier. But tonight she had survived, and in that survival she had begun to stake her place in a world that had seemed so unwelcoming just hours before. The frontier was harsh, unpredictable, and often cruel, but it also rewarded courage. And Leora had plenty of that. The sun rose over Silver Canyon, painting the dusty streets in warm shades of gold and orange. The quiet of morning was broken by the soft cries of Leora's twins. She rose from the cot, careful not to wake the babies completely, and gently rocked them in her arms. Their small hands curled around her fingers, and she smiled softly. Life had been difficult, but they had survived, and that was what mattered. Doctor. Elias Thorne was already at work in his clinic, organizing medicines and equipment. He looked up as Leora entered. "Good morning," he said quietly. "Did you sleep well?" Leora shook her head with a small smile. "Not much," she admitted. "But the twins did, and that is what counts." Elias nodded. "You'll need energy today. The town will be watching. Some will be curious, some doubtful, but you must show them you are strong, capable, and kind." Leora held the twins close. "I will do what I must," she said. Her voice was steady, but her mind raced with questions. How could she make a place for herself here when Ryder Callahan had already rejected her? How could she earn trust in a town that was used to judging strangers harshly? Elias handed her a small bundle of supplies. "Start with small acts, help those who need care, show courage, patience, and skill. People notice that even if they do not say it." With that advice, Leora stepped into the bright morning. Her first stop was the market. The town's main street was slowly coming to life, with settlers arranging goods, children running between stalls, and horses tied to posts, while their riders went inside the saloon or general store. Whispers followed her as she walked, some admiring, some critical. She paid them no mind. Her focus was on the twins and the task of survival. A small commotion caught her attention. At the edge of the street, a young boy had fallen from a cart, scraping his knee badly. The mother looked panicked, unsure what to do. Without hesitation, Leora approached, kneeling beside the boy. "It's all right," she said, gently examining the wound. She cleaned it carefully and wrapped a small bandage around the child's knee. The boy's mother stared in surprise. Who are you?" she asked. "I'm Leora," she said simply. "I'm new here, but I can help." Word spread quickly. By the time she finished, a small crowd had gathered. Some nodded respectfully, others whispered. Leora handed the mother a clean cloth and instructions for keeping the wound clean. "He'll be fine," she assured them. The boy looked up at her with wide eyes, his fear replaced by trust. Even Ryder Callahan had paused in the distance to watch. He remained stoic, but something inside him shifted slightly. The woman he had rejected had just saved a child without hesitation. Her courage and kindness were undeniable. Later, Leora moved on to other tasks. She helped an elderly settler carry water barrels from the well and guided a lost traveler toward the correct path out of town. Each small act, though seemingly ordinary, displayed her strength, resourcefulness, and determination. The town began to notice. Quiet admiration replaced some of the earlier skepticism. The twins, meanwhile, adapted quickly to the rhythm of the frontier. One laughed at the sound of a horse's whinny, the other reached eagerly for the sun-warmed dust. Leora watched them, her heart swelling. She had survived countless dangers on distant planets, but this, raising children in a new and challenging world, was proving to be its own test. Yet she faced it with courage, as always. By midday, Leora returned to Dr. Thorne's clinic with the twins. She had seen enough of the town's reactions to know that her presence was starting to matter. Elias met her with a small smile. "You are making an impression," he said. "People are beginning to respect you, not everyone, but enough to matter." "I did what any mother would do," Leora said quietly, "and what anyone trying to survive here would do. I don't need recognition, only a place to belong." Elias nodded. "Sometimes recognition comes naturally when you do the right thing. Keep showing your worth, and the town will learn to trust you. Even Ryder Callahan will have to notice eventually." Ryder, of course, remained distant. He had watched her all morning from the porch of his ranch, his expression unreadable. Pride made it difficult for him to admit it, but he could not ignore her resilience. She had arrived as a stranger, rejected by him, and yet she had already proven her value. The twins thrived under her care, the townsfolk saw her bravery, and she handled challenges with composure that even he could not match. As afternoon approached, a sudden incident tested her skills further. A fire had broken out near the edge of town. A small warehouse storing supplies was engulfed in flames, and smoke poured into the sky. Panic spread as people scrambled to move goods and protect their homes. Leora acted immediately. With her knowledge of emergency measures from the colonies, she directed townsfolk to create a bucket chain and guided them in removing flammable materials from the path of the fire. Her quick thinking prevented the blaze from spreading to nearby homes. The twins, strapped safely to her back, remained calm, their presence a reminder of what she had to protect. Dr. Thorne arrived to assist her. "You are remarkable," he said, directing people to move water faster. "Few here would think clearly in a crisis, but you," he gestured to her calm and effective leadership. "You've made a difference." Ryder watched silently from a distance. His jaw tightened as he realized that the woman he had scorned was saving the town he considered his own. His pride wrestled with the undeniable truth. Leora had strength, intelligence, and courage. He had misjudged her entirely. When the fire was finally under control, the townsfolk gathered to thank Leora. Children clung to their mothers, older settlers nodded with respect, and even a few of Ryder's ranch hands exchanged impressed glances. Leora accepted their gratitude with humility. "I am no hero," she said softly. "I only do what must be done to survive and to help others." That evening, she returned to Dr. Thorne's clinic with the twins. Her body was tired, her muscles sore, but her heart felt lighter. She had survived her first full day in Silver Canyon, and she had begun to carve out a place for herself. Elias poured a small cup of tea and handed it to her. "Today you showed them your worth," he said. "Tomorrow you will do the same, and the day after that. The town may be stubborn, but courage and determination leave marks that even the harshest frontier cannot erase." Leora nodded, sipping the warm tea. "I will continue," she said firmly. "For the twins, for myself, and for anyone who needs help, I will prove that we belong here." As night fell, the twins slept peacefully, their small chests rising and falling in quiet rhythm. Leora gazed out the window at the dusty streets of Silver Canyon. The town that had seemed so unwelcoming just hours before now felt full of possibilities. There would be challenges, there always were, but she had already begun to earn respect. And somewhere on the porch of his ranch, Ryder Callahan sat in the fading light, watching her quietly. He could not yet bring himself to admit it, but his thoughts had changed. The woman he had rejected was not weak or helpless. She was strong, brave, and capable of surviving anything the frontier or the stars could throw at her. Leora whispered softly to the twins, brushing their hair from their foreheads. "We will make it here," she said. "We will find a place where we belong." The stars above Silver Canyon twinkled brightly, as if in agreement. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, she had taken the first steps toward building a life for herself and her children in a world that had once seemed unkind and unforgiving. And in that quiet, under the starlit sky, the first bonds of respect and trust began to form, not only between Leora and the town, but also silently between her and the man who had once turned her away. The morning sun rose over Silver Canyon, turning the dusty streets into a golden haze. Leora had been awake long before it peeked over the horizon. The twins slept peacefully in a small cot, and she carefully lifted them into her arms, feeling their warmth. Today would be different. She could sense it in the air. Something restless stirred on the edge of the town, a tension that even the wind seemed to carry. Dr. Elias Thorne arrived at the clinic just as Leora stepped outside. His expression was serious. "We have reports," he said quietly. "A band of raiders has been seen near the outer ridge. They may be heading this way." Leora's heart did not race, though her mind immediately went to planning. "How many?" she asked. "Not enough to worry the town if we act wisely," Elias replied, his eyes narrowing. "But they are armed and dangerous. They have been raiding supply shipments from the colonies. We cannot underestimate them." Leora nodded. "Then we prepare. We cannot let the town be caught off guard." She glanced at the twins. "They must remain safe. Nothing else matters if they are in danger." Word of the approaching raiders spread quickly through Silver Canyon. Settlers hurried to secure their homes, tying gates and stacking supplies in safe areas. Horses were readied for escape if needed, and families gathered their belongings. The town had faced dangers before, but the idea of an armed band descending from the ridge brought a sharp edge to everyone's movements. Ryder Callahan appeared, mounting his horse with a determined look. Leora watched him, noting the tension in his jaw. He had never welcomed her, yet today they would face the same danger together. Pride made it difficult for him to speak, but his eyes betrayed his concern. He had begun to recognize that her presence, her knowledge, and her bravery might be the difference between survival and disaster. Leora moved quickly. She directed settlers to create barriers at the town's entrances, using barrels, crates, and whatever strong materials they could find. She had studied defense strategies during her travels across colonies, and though the materials were simple, her tactics were clever. "Form 2 lines," she instructed, her voice calm and steady. "If they come too close, we push them back without risking the children." Dr. Thorne and Ryder worked alongside her, following her directions. The twins were safely secured in a small wagon behind the clinic, blankets wrapped tightly around them. Even though they were young, they seemed to sense the tension, their small hands gripping Leora's coat, as if drawing courage from her presence. By midday, dust clouds appeared on the horizon. The raiders had arrived, their figures moving swiftly along the ridge, armed with rifles and strange-looking equipment, remnants of off-world technology scavenged during previous raids. The townsfolk froze for a moment, then quickly followed Leora's instructions, moving into positions she had designated. Ryder dismounted and approached her. "You really know what you're doing," he said, his voice low. Pride battled with admiration in his expression. "I never thought I'd see the day when you lead this town." "I do what must be done," Leora replied calmly. "If we survive, we all have a future. If we hesitate, the town loses everything." Her eyes swept over the crowd, noticing the fear in some and the determination in others. She drew a deep breath and stood tall. "Remember your positions, trust your training and your instincts, and stay safe." The raiders advanced. They expected an easy target, an unprepared frontier town, but Leora's strategy surprised them. Barriers slowed their approach, and townsfolk, armed with rifles and makeshift weapons, defended their positions with quiet resolve. The first wave of raiders hesitated, giving Leora the chance to coordinate the next line of defense. A sudden shout caught her attention. One of the raiders had tried to sneak around the back, heading straight for the clinic where the twins were. Without hesitation, Leora sprinted, her boots kicking up dust. She reached the intruder just as he tried to force open the door. With a quick, precise move, she disarmed him, forcing him to the ground. The twins, safe in their blankets, gurgled and laughed, unaware of how close danger had come. Dr. Thorne arrived beside her, helping to restrain the raider. "You're fearless," he said, shaking his head in quiet amazement. "Few people here would act so quickly." "I have no choice," Leora said simply. "I cannot risk them or the town." The main group of raiders tried to push forward, but Leora had anticipated their moves. She had directed townsfolk to use clever traps, nets to snag the riders' horses, small explosions to slow their advance, and barricades that forced them into narrow paths where they could be easily confronted. Every tactic was precise, minimizing risk to civilians while maximizing effectiveness. Ryder was at her side, firing carefully, moving as she instructed. The man who had rejected her weeks ago now followed her lead without hesitation. Leora noticed the shift in him, but there was no time to think about it. Survival required focus. Hours passed in tense action. The raiders tried to regroup, but Leora's strategies kept them off balance. "Doctor." Thorne moved swiftly among the townsfolk, tending to minor injuries and ensuring that everyone remained organized. The twins, still safe in their wagon, seemed to sense the calm authority of Leora and Elias, and they rested quietly. Finally, as the sun began to lower, the raiders retreated. Their numbers had been reduced, their confidence shaken by a town that refused to be easy prey. Leora's calm direction and quick thinking had turned a potentially disastrous situation into a victory for Silver Canyon. The townsfolk erupted in relief and quiet celebration. Children ran to hug their parents, settlers cheered, and even some of Ryder's ranch hands nodded in respect. Leora, breathing heavily, gathered the twins into her arms. She felt their small hands clutch at her coat, a reminder of why she had fought so hard. Ryder approached her again. His face was serious, but there was a glimmer of respect. "I misjudged you," he said quietly. "I see now you are more than I thought." "Stronger than I could have imagined." Leora looked at him calmly. "Strength is not about pride or position," she said. "It is about courage, care, and the willingness to protect what matters. Today, that was the town and these children. I do not fight for approval, only for survival and for those I love." Ryder nodded slowly. He did not smile, but there was a hint of understanding in his eyes. "You've earned their respect," he admitted. "And maybe mine, too." Dr. Thorne came forward, a small smile on his face. "This day proves it," he said. "Silver Canyon is stronger because of you, and so are we all." Leora nodded, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. It had been a long day, filled with danger and tension, but it had also been a day that proved her worth. The town would remember this day, and she had shown that she belonged, not just as a mother, but as a capable and intelligent leader. As the night settled over the town, Leora stood on the edge of the clinic, watching the stars blink above Silver Canyon. The twins slept peacefully in their small cot, and she knew that the frontier had tested her strength in ways few could imagine. She had faced threats that were beyond the normal challenges of town life, yet she had prevailed. Ryder Callahan watched from a distance, leaning against the rail of his porch. He did not speak, but he observed her with a newfound respect. The woman he had rejected was not weak, not helpless, and certainly not ordinary. She had the courage and skill to protect the town, the wisdom to guide its people, and the heart to care for the twins despite every danger. In the quiet night, Leora whispered softly to the children, brushing their hair from their small faces. "We survived today," she said. "And tomorrow we will face whatever comes next together." Silver Canyon had been tested, but so had Leora. She had arrived as a stranger, rejected by one man, watched with suspicion by many, yet she had proven her value through courage, intelligence, and care. The town had survived the threat, but it was more than that. Through her actions, the town had gained hope, trust, and a renewed sense of community. And somewhere in the shadows, Ryder Callahan thought about the woman who had led the defense. He did not yet understand all of his feelings, but he knew one thing. The frontier had a new leader in Leora, and she was not someone he could ignore. The wind swept softly through the streets of Silver Canyon, carrying the scent of dust and sage. Fires smoldered in the distance, reminders of the day's battle, but the town was alive, intact, and stronger. Leora held the twins close, feeling the rhythm of their breathing, and for the first time since her arrival, she allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready. She had survived the trials of the frontier, earned respect through action, and shown the town and herself what courage truly meant. And as she looked up at the stars, she knew that no matter what came next, she and her twins would face it together, strong, fearless, and determined. The morning sun rose over Silver Canyon with a gentle warmth, and the town stirred with the quiet rhythm of a frontier community, slowly returning to normal. After the threat of the raiders, the streets were lined with people repairing buildings, tending to small fires, and checking supplies. Though the danger had passed, a lingering tension remained, a reminder that life on the frontier was never easy. Leora woke to the soft coos of her twins. Their small hands reached for her as she rose from the cot, brushing strands of hair from their faces. She smiled, feeling the weight of exhaustion from the previous day's battle. Yet beneath that tiredness, there was a sense of accomplishment and quiet pride. She had survived. The town had survived, and she had proven her worth not just to herself, but to the people around her. Dr. Elias Thorne greeted her at the clinic door. "Good morning," he said warmly. "Sleep well?" "Enough," Leora replied, adjusting the twins on her hip. "They slept through the night, thankfully. I think we all needed it." Elias nodded, glancing out the window at the bustling town. "The people are starting to see what I saw from the beginning," he said. "You are strong, capable, and determined. You've earned their trust." Leora's lips curved into a small smile. "I only did what needed to be done. They deserve to be protected. The twins deserve a safe place to grow. That is all that matters to me." Outside, the town was stirring more actively. Settlers emerged from their homes, nodding and greeting her with small gestures of respect. Children waved shyly, and some adults whispered words of gratitude for her actions during the raid. For the first time since her arrival, Leora felt a genuine sense of belonging. She had come to Silver Canyon as a stranger, rejected by one man, and now she was becoming part of the community. Ryder Callahan stood at the edge of the street, his hat tipped low to shield his eyes from the morning sun. He watched Leora as she moved among the townsfolk, assisting where she could and offering guidance without condescension. Pride and stubbornness battled inside him, but he could not deny what he saw. She had become essential to the town's safety and spirit. When Leora approached him, Ryder straightened, adjusting his hat. "You've done well," he said quietly, his voice lacking its usual sharpness. "The town owes you more than I can put into words." "I did what anyone would," Leora replied calmly, glancing down at the twins as they gurgled happily. "The town deserved protection, and they are my responsibility. That is enough." Ryder nodded slowly, a flicker of respect in his eyes. He may not have said it, but he was beginning to see her not as a stranger, but as a person of strength, courage, and heart. As the day progressed, Leora continued to work alongside Dr. Thorne and other settlers. Together, they repaired damaged buildings, cleared debris, and ensured that everyone had the supplies they needed. Her knowledge of advanced techniques from her travels across the colonies proved invaluable. She showed settlers how to reinforce walls, purify water, and create simple but effective security measures. Her guidance was precise, practical, and respected by all. Even the children were drawn to her. They followed her through the streets, curious about her methods and inspired by her confidence. The twins, safe and happy in her care, were a constant reminder of why she had fought so hard to belong. Her patience and care extended to everyone, and the town began to see her not only as a protector but as a leader. By late afternoon, the town had regained its rhythm. Settlers paused to catch their breath, children played in the open streets, and a sense of calm settled over Silver Canyon. Leora stood at the edge of the clinic, watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. She had faced danger, judgment, and the harshness of frontier life, yet she had endured. She had proven that worth was not determined by appearances or expectations, but by courage, determination, and care for others. Dr. Thorne approached her with a smile. "They are beginning to trust you fully," he said. "Even Ryder seems to understand now." Leora glanced toward the ranch. Ryder was speaking quietly to one of his men, his posture relaxed but alert. She could see the subtle way he observed her, a mix of caution and respect. It was a small acknowledgement, but it meant more than any words. Evening approached, and the sky turned a deep orange, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. Leora gathered the twins and walked slowly toward the town square. A small crowd had gathered, curious and respectful. They had come to witness her presence, to acknowledge her contributions, and perhaps to offer thanks. A few settlers stepped forward, presenting small tokens of appreciation, fresh bread, jars of preserved fruit, and simple gifts made with care. Leora accepted them with a gracious nod, her eyes scanning the crowd. She did not seek praise, but the gratitude of the town felt like a quiet victory. Ryder stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, finally closing the distance. "You have changed this town," he said quietly, "not with words but with action. You have shown courage, intelligence, and heart. I misjudged you when you first arrived." Leora looked at him calmly, her gaze steady. "I did what needed to be done. Respect is earned through actions, not words. You are not the one who decides my worth." Ryder nodded, a subtle acknowledgement in his expression. Pride still lingered, but the seed of understanding had grown. He had learned that strength came in many forms, and that the woman he had once dismissed possessed qualities he could neither ignore nor deny. As night fell, the townsfolk gathered around a small fire in the square. The warm glow illuminated smiling faces, children playing, and adults exchanging quiet conversations. Leora sat with the twins in her lap, feeling the warmth of the community around her. She had arrived as a stranger, rejected and judged, but she was leaving a mark on the town that would endure. Dr. Thorne joined her, sitting beside the cot. "You've done more than survive," he said softly. "You've changed the town. They see your worth, and so do I." Leora smiled gently, brushing the twins' hair from their foreheads. "I only did what I had to do. The town gave me a place to belong, and I gave back what I could. That is all." Ryder approached the fire, standing quietly at the edge of the circle. He did not speak, but his presence was a silent acknowledgement of her strength. The twins reached toward him, and he crouched slightly, offering a hand. It was a tentative gesture, but it was enough to show that the walls of rejection had begun to crumble. As the night deepened, the town of Silver Canyon felt alive with hope. The events of the past days had forged new bonds, strengthened trust, and proven that courage and care could overcome even the harshest challenges. Leora's presence had not only protected the town, but had inspired it, showing that determination, intelligence, and compassion were as valuable as any weapon or tool in survival. The twins, now asleep in her arms, were safe and sound. Leora looked up at the starlit sky, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had faced rejection, danger, and uncertainty, yet she had endured. She had earned her place in the town and in the hearts of its people. Ryder finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "You belong here," he said simply. Leora's gaze met his, calm and unshaken. "I belong because I fought, because I protected, and because I cared. That is what gives anyone their place." The town seemed to breathe as one, a quiet recognition of the woman who had arrived with nothing but courage, determination, and two small children. Leora had shown them that worth was not measured by circumstance, appearance, or expectation, but by action, heart, and resilience. As the fire flickered and the stars shone brightly above Silver Canyon, Leora held her twins close, feeling the warmth of the community around her. The frontier was still harsh, the future uncertain, and challenges would always arise, but tonight she had won something more than survival. She had earned respect, trust, and a place where she and her children could grow, thrive, and belong. "Doctor." Thorne placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The town will continue to look to you not just for protection, but for guidance. You've proven your worth, and now you are part of Silver Canyon's future." Leora nodded, feeling a quiet satisfaction settle within her. She had arrived as a stranger, rejected and judged, and now she was part of something greater than herself. Her courage, wisdom, and heart had shaped a town, safeguarded her children, and transformed the perceptions of even the hardest men. And somewhere on the edge of the square, Ryder Callahan observed quietly, no longer with prideful disdain, but with a deep, unspoken respect. He had seen her strength, her wisdom, and her courage, and he knew that Leora's place in Silver Canyon was secure. She had arrived as an outsider, but she had become a cornerstone of the community, a symbol of hope, resilience, and unwavering heart. The night stretched on, quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire and the gentle breathing of sleeping children. Leora whispered softly to her twins, brushing their hair from their faces. "We are home now," she said, "and we will face whatever comes next together." The stars above twinkled like distant promises, and Silver Canyon, once a town of whispers and judgment, now stood alive with trust, hope, and respect. For Leora, for her twins, and for the enduring spirit of the frontier. The mail-order bride who had arrived with nothing but courage had become more than a survivor. She had become a leader, a protector, and a symbol of what it meant to face life with unwavering heart. And as she sat among the townsfolk, the twins nestled safely in her arms. Leora knew that this was only the beginning of a life full of challenges, triumphs, and the quiet, steady victories that defined true belonging.